Hey Victor, how are you?
Dominic?
Yes, can you hear me well?
Just one sec. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes, I can. Very well.
Perfect. Wonderful.
All right. Great to see you. Yeah, we just have a couple of attendees signing in now. So
Perfect.
we'll start, I think, maybe a couple of minutes after 6 o'clock, or
Yeah.
after 8 o'clock your time, just to give everyone time to
Yeah.
wake up, depending on where they are around the world, or close their laptops if they're finishing up their day. Okay, fantastic. So for those that are tuning in, we'll just wait a couple more minutes to give everyone time to sign in. We'll be recording this, so everyone will receive a full recording of the webinar so they can also go through it in their own time. We'll also have a Q&A, so we also want this to be as interactive as possible. So if you have questions, please send them through. We already have some ahead of the webinar. But yeah, we really appreciate everyone joining from all over the world for us to share some knowledge, and particularly hear from Victor, who's certainly a leader in digital marketing for e-commerce businesses out of Dubai. But I'll let him introduce himself in a couple of minutes.
Thank you, Dominic.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I think we'll make a start. For those that are joining from around the world, whether it be the US, Europe, the Middle East, or even Australia or Asia, thank you very much for taking the time to join our webinar today. The whole purpose of this is really to share knowledge. We want it to be as engaging as possible. Victor and I, when discussing about our webinar and what we would go through in the next hour or so, it was all about making sure that everyone has some tangible takeaways from this. So of course, if you have any questions, please follow up. Also after the webinar, we'll also be sending an email out. But yeah, the webinar topic for today is quite focused on e-commerce. It's about the playbook for first building and growing an e-commerce brand or business, which is certainly in Victor's domain, and then ultimately exiting a brand, which is often the goal for a lot of founders. So yeah, before we go ahead, I'll just introduce myself. So my name's Dominic Sullivan. I'm a senior M&A advisor at Flippa. I've spent about 8 years now in the M&A profession. I've worked on deals between 500K and $5 billion across the world. I focus more on financial due diligence and had more of a background as an accountant. working on deals in different industries, in terms whether it be mining, more traditional businesses. I worked for a number of key private equity clients around the world. However, in the last 2.5 years, I moved to Flippa to work more closely with founders who are looking to exit. It's something that's a huge passion of mine. I get a lot of satisfaction out of it, working closely with founders who have built something from the ground up and then exiting to high net wealth individuals, private equity groups, aggregators, etc. So that's enough. That's a bit about me, or enough about me. A lot of you are here to hear. A lot of you are here to listen to Viktor. So Viktor, could you please tell us a bit about yourself?
Oh, of course. It's a pleasure to be here, Dominic, and thank you for the nice introduction. So, yeah, I'm Viktor Moller, and I'm the founder of VIKST. And I would say my focus and my only focus is really around scaling e-commerce brands. And yeah, based here in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, originally from Denmark, and currently I lead a team of 7 full-time across paid socials or media buying, overall creative strategy, and just overall, we're 7 or 8 full-time, including myself, just really growing our clients. And last year, 2024, we generated just about $40 million in track revenue for our e-commerce clients, primarily through paid social, a little bit through Google as well, but primarily paid social, which I'm also primarily going to talk about today. And focus a lot on growth strategies on Meta, Snapchat, Google, so paid social, and then also Google Ads as well. And lastly, I focus on sort of building growth frameworks for our clients. So I focus on what's newest in the market and then just constantly refining our service overall to help our clients to scale profitably and predictably. And then I'm just overall very passionate about also working with founders, working with brands, working with marketing teams, and very passionate about storytelling and paid social, so turning that into something together and just overall scaling e-commerce brands and turning great products into really good brands that people buy from. I think, I think you're muted, Dominic.
Thank you. Bit of a rookie error, but nonetheless, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, we're going to go through, I guess, two key topics and then have a Q&A over the next 45 minutes to 60 minutes. The first is going to be about building and growing your e-commerce business. And then the second topic, and that will be covered by Viktor as the expert. And then I'll be covering planning your M&A exit and the process with that. And then, of course, we'll have time for questions at the end. But as well, if you would like to ask that more in a private setting, then you can always contact us for a meeting after this. So let's certainly dig in. Building and growing your e-commerce business. So Viktor, perhaps you want to talk to us a little bit about Meta and the power of Meta. It's certainly much of a debate at the moment about the power of Meta. So yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah, it is 100%. And I would love to talk about building and growing e-commerce brand. And then Dominic, then I'm sure you can share a lot of good things as well. I've made these slides here. So Meta is the first one just to talk to everyone about why I believe and also why we see that Meta is still the #1 platform for profitable but also predictable e-commerce growth. Because then my next slide is sort of going to be about Meta and how to make Meta more profitable, the Meta ads, and how to succeed with Meta ads. Because to make a profitable e-commerce brand, you do need to scale, you need a certain amount of volume. And I do believe Meta is still the #1 platform. Some of the things is that there's unmatched scale. There's like 3.3 billion that use Meta, which is including Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. There's also including Messenger. So it's really the most used social media ecosystem in the world. And then like out of the top 4 social media platforms, 3 of them are from Meta. And then there's YouTube, which is from Google. And then it has the best algorithm. I think we've all tried to look up for something on Google or talk about something, and suddenly you're just only getting ads about it. It does have the best algorithm, it doesn't just know, who you're following or what you're liking, but it knows a lot of things about you that you probably don't even know by yourself. It has a lot of data and very good algorithm, 100% from what we see the strongest algorithm, also compared to Snapchat, TikTok, and so on. Then one of the good things about Meta is also that if you can master interruption-based marketing, it is, I would say, equals to infinite scale. You're not really limited by the amount of people, for example, searching on Google, which is some of the cons with Google, and one of the pros with Meta that you can target if you have like a marketing funnel, it's like the top 3 is the one that are sort of ready to buy, which is the one on Google that are, for example, searching. And you're not limited to that by scaling on Meta, and you have a bit more control and power in that way. And for example, if you do some due diligence and you see, okay, 100,000 people are searching for a product, and maybe an average click-through rate on Google search would be maybe 5.5%, then you only have 5,500 potential customers at that given time, whereas with Meta, you can really scale a lot more. Also, the best platform when it comes to like utilizing storytelling. I'm going to talk a bit more about that in some of the coming slides. Also UGC, EGC, which is employee generated content, but over like founder-led ads, creating viral hooks, Meta is still the best platform for that, where you can really utilize the storytelling at scale. And yeah, overall, like you're not sort of competing against massive search advertisers directly. This can be, for example, because when people go to Google, it's typically to search for something they need, and then they would typically compare on prices and so on. Where with Meta, you don't have the market for yourself because there's also a lot of other competitors on Meta, but people are not there to compare you with other competitors, where they do that more with Google. Also, you sort of build your own lane and grow efficiently there with the right creative strategy. You can sort of control the narrative about your brand. And people are also there to shop. Like 78% says that Facebook and Instagram influence their buying decisions, whether it's high ticket, low ticket. Meta is still super powerful. And yeah, then a lot of people are using Meta on phone, so it's mobile first, which is also, shopping on an e-commerce store. Majority of purchases are made from the phone, and no other platform really uses or have this level of scalability, whether it's $50 a day, 50K a day. Meta is still the most profitable place to scale an e-commerce brand. But now that we have that covered, I would love to go to the next slide, Dominic, if you can just slide, because then that will be about how we can make Meta ads more profitable. First of all, by knowing your metrics, and Dominic, maybe we'll also talk later about some of the metrics and what people are looking at. So I won't elaborate too much on that, but lifetime value is really one of the keys to scaling your brand, because what we see today in 2025 is that there's more competition than ever, and it's getting only harder and harder by every year to be profitable with Meta, and it requires more and more from your marketing team, or in terms of like knowing your numbers as a founder or marketing manager and so on. So the ones that can really have the lowest CAC, like customer acquisition cost, is often the ones that win, and then they can win on the lifetime value, for example, in the backend. Most brands focus a lot on day one sales, but the real profits, as we often see it, starts after the first purchase. And chasing quick wins only leads to low sustainability. So if you don't have a retention system, it can damage your business in the long run. And having lifetime value will also ultimately increase the value if you should sell it. But just to give an example, like if your CPA is currently $50, you have an average order value of 60 and 50 CPA, you are barely breaking even. You're probably losing a bit of money, unless your lifetime value kicks in, because if that same customer comes back and spends another 100, then your ROAS multiplies, then will be just over 3x ROAS without any extra ad spend. So a high and strong lifetime value allows you to spend more to acquire customers and still win, because brand with a high lifetime value can outbid the competition and afford a lower customer acquisition cost. And in that way, you can just scale over your competition. So I've also made this short calculation here, like lifetime value divided by the CAC is the CAC ratio. I think, Dominic, I just looked at some of your slides prior to this. I think you also talk a bit about that, but that also directly goes into how valuable your business is. And then I'm sure Dominic can elaborate a bit more on the numbers and so on. But buyers look a lot at lifetime value when buying a business. Again, Dominic, this is your expertise, but they don't just look at short-term profit. And it shows, brand loyalty, product market fit, and just long-term growth potential if you have a good lifetime value. So yeah, and then there's a tool here that I mentioned at the end, Lifetimely. That's something you download on Shopify as an app, just so that you know your numbers. I meet a lot of e-commerce founders who are making orders and so on. But what is your lifetime value? And people don't know. So it's very important to know those numbers, especially if you are at a certain scale. Also to know which customers have the highest lifetime value. Is it the customers that comes in from a discount or not from a discount? Is it organic paid? It's very important to look into the data about your lifetime value to understand which customers do you have a high lifetime value on. Because sometimes you might think, wow, I'm getting good ROAS here, but what is lifetime value on that specific customer versus maybe some ads you're running with a lower ROAS, but what is lifetime value on them and so on. But yeah. Then in the next slide, I had a few specific examples on how to increase lifetime value, I'll just quickly go through those. So one of the things is strong post-purchase upsells and cross-sells, automated post-purchase email flows to re-engage and educate customers. So having a post-purchase email flow, for example, in Klaviyo. I think a lot of e-commerce brands using Klaviyo. So also targeted email campaigns to say top of mind. So building that community about the brand is also very important to just constantly be top of mind of your ideal customer. And then you can of course also use the post-purchase flow to educate your customers even more about your product. For example, I recently bought like a cold or a cooling mattress for my bed, and then I got so many emails afterwards about how can I install it, educating me about why it's so good for me, etc., just reconfirming that it's the right thing, that I actually bought the product. And it just makes me more of a fan of the product because I constantly get knowledge about the product and the brand. And yeah, it just makes something, and you're just feeling more connected to the brand in a way. It's like a community feeling. So also something that we see is powerful for increasing lifetime value is retention campaigns on Meta to bring back past customers. And then also like Instagram organic, I do see that it's sometimes just underrated, like having good reels on Instagram, try to really build up an Instagram following and just having a strong presence on Instagram, constantly posting, building an authentic page and not just spam post pictures from a shoot or some boring things that people in the end really don't want to see maybe, but really showing something authentic behind the brand that people would love to see, especially the people that have a high lifetime value, people that wants to be a part of a community. So yeah, then subscription based is obviously always high lifetime value with supplements, coffee, skincare, and so on. But I think like number one thing with talking about a good lifetime value is just having good product. If you have good product, great retention, and ultimately greater lifetime value. So overall, I'll just say number one thing, no matter which hacks you implement, is always just in the end having good product. And then just creating that community feeling about the brand so that your customers are more emotionally connected. And so it's not just a purchase of a certain product, but you more buy into the brand as well. And yeah, then launch new products or bundles to give more people more reasons to buy, retarget them with that, whether that's through SMS marketing, WhatsApp marketing, email marketing, etc. But overall, give some bundles or launch new stuff, and then tell your customers or past customers about it. But yeah, that's it for this one. So that's like lifetime value and just knowing the numbers, so you can scale further. And how, again, like how can you scale having the lowest customer acquisition cost, because that will be really, really powerful for your business. Then speaking, sort of going into content, like to make Meta profitable in the first place, we all know that content is king, and creatives are everything when it comes to the performance. So the first thing with the creative, especially if you're running videos, now I'm talking about videos specifically and not pictures, but that's obviously the hook. Like your first 1 to 3 seconds are everything. If you don't get the attention, you will lose the customer. So great hooks need to create some sort of curiosity, excitement, or tension that enforces the viewer to keep watching. And then the next 3 seconds after that, it also need to be engaging the next 3 seconds after that. But the hook is the ultimate most important thing, because people, most of the time, they will just scroll right by. So best performing hooks is typically speaking directly to a pain point with your customer, some sort of desire or pain point that your customer already feels. And again, you will get to know this during the due diligence phase or research phase. Visual movement also is often really good in the beginning. So that can be like hand gestures, fast cuts, some sort of movement. It can also be, if it's something related to running, it can be someone running or just someone like moving really quickly. Can often be very powerful in the beginning to get the attention really quickly, because so many people are just scrolling on feed, swiping on story, and you need to get the attention really fast. And also something to keep in mind is also like making it more relatable so that people feel like it's just their friend that are posting something. Often that can also work really well. But really trying to get that in the first, often people say 3 seconds is the hook, but actually if you can get it, we've tested this so many times, for example, like 4 seconds versus 2 seconds, it's way easier to call out your customer in the first 2 seconds. It performs way better because people will just be more hooked, and it will call out. Not only will people watch the video further, but the ones that then does watch the video further are more qualified, and it just really creates a positive flywheel effect when you have the strong hook in the first like 2-3 seconds. And yeah, then I've made some proven hooks here that works for the ads. These are like more generic and a lot of that TikTok kind of vibe. With that said, like obviously this depends so much on your brand and what your brand is really all about. But it's like you need to sort of try this, and this product is going crazy on TikTok. I just discovered this is a real game changer. For example, like, and if you even go back to a, let's say like a cooling mattress for the bed, it can be like if you're targeting parents, for example, you know, as a dad, I haven't been getting good sleep for the last 3 months, and now I finally discovered this product, and like really just talking into your ideal customer, their pain points and so on, like right in the beginning, so you call them out, and then yeah, I think that's everything regarding the hooks here, Dominic.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. We also have a question. I mean, around like the recycling of content. I've seen a lot of creative campaigns as well of certain e-commerce brands that I've sold. I think it's fine to recycle as long as you adapt it, and if it's trending, it's even better, right? So, do you have some views on that, Viktor?
I
On
think it's good
recycling content? Yeah, yeah.
to
Of
use like
recycling or
old
using
reels
trends.
and then just use them as ads. 100%.
Yeah.
I will also touch on that in some of the other slides, but it's always good to have as much to work with as possible on Meta and just feed it with as much as possible. But a lot of the reels there, I think there's a difference between making a reel and then making an ad, because reels for the brand would typically be more brandy and or like more exclusive in it. Again, like depending on the brand, where as an ad, we try and always think into how can we have the right hook and so on. But I would even say with Reels, you can also focus a lot on having the right hook and so on. And then you can use it both organically and paid 100%.
Thank you. Very helpful. So AI and UGC.
Yeah, that's a very sort of discussed topic and something that's still quite new and quite trendy these days. Things are popping off on a lot of people are talking about it at different places online. But I wanted to cover this also because it's such an interesting thing, and it's something that if you have an e-commerce brand and you haven't tested, you need to test. And also if you have an e-commerce brand, and so many brands are scaling with AI UGC right now, and it's such a good opportunity here in 2025. So AI user-generated content is really one of the fastest ways to create scroll-stopping creatives right now in 2025. There's tools like Arcats, there's tools like Top View, there's tools like there's different tools out there that can really generate ad-ready UGC fast. And when I say fast, it's like really fast. You can do it way faster than using humans. There's no human friction, and even from my point of view, Dominic, maybe we can speak about that later. But like having a business that runs smooth and that is not maybe as human heavy, then AI UGC is just so powerful. And especially if you have some sort of graphic team or you have like an agency that can do it, but then it's so efficient because there's no human complexity and there's no like, oh, I just need to edit this and then a couple of weeks goes by and you need to pay so much for a UGC video. And it's so much more both time and cost efficient to do UGC if it works. Obviously, if it doesn't work, it's not that nice. But if you can get AI UGC to work really well, it's just a win-win-win because you just really decreases the human complexity. One thing that we always try and keep in mind also with the AI videos is prioritizing the sound or the visual. And what I mean by this is that the visual can always be edited after, but the sound, we try and always get that to be really good from the AI creators, and it is often really, really good. The sound, if you have just a normal script in English or whatever language, it's typically really good, the sound and the way that they speak. Sometimes they would even have like a good microphone and like it's just really good sound. The visual can always be edited after. And what I mean by that is that you can use AI to generate like 80% of the base content, and then you can use B-rolls and polish it afterwards to make it feel more human. So for example, even like there's some AI UGC creators that like sitting in front of a laptop or a desk and having a proper microphone, and then they're like down the corner, and then you can like add B-rolls over. So something that we try and focus on with so many of our brands is just collecting as much B-roll as possible, because then we can always use that in different sentences that we then have in the UGC content. And Joseph, I just saw you said B-rolls. It's like B-rolls is like what you see when you're like, so when I'm speaking, then there's like B-rolls coming in. For example, like if I'm speaking about, oh, the packaging is so amazing on this specific brand, And then there's a video, like a B-roll going in where there's someone opening a package or something like that. Or if I'm saying, like, hey, this sleeping mattress, I'm going to bed in the evening and so on. And then there's like a B-roll of me laying down in the bed or something like that. B-roll is just like a lot of clips. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, Victor, what exactly is a B-roll? I only heard about B-roll actually last week for the first time, and now
Ah,
it's
okay.
been again. So yeah, can you maybe explain a bit more about that?
Yeah, it's just like a lot of clips. I thought Joseph also just said gotcha, but yeah, it's just like a lot of clips. We just try and like get as many clips as possible. So let's say you have a certain product, it's just getting so many clips where the product is being used, it's being opened, it's in a lifestyle setting, it's being
Unedited, is it unedited videos of stuff, basically?
it can also be edited, but it's more just so let's say I'm here and I'm talking about something and then my face is like down the corner and I'm talking about a certain product that I'm using. So like I'm making an ad and then it's like, hey, I got this cooling mattress, and then there's just like a B-roll going over where there's someone opening a box or so it's just like something like going on the side in a way. So there's something primary and then it's just going on the side on the video, for example, on story or feed.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. But that can be very powerful. And we try and like collect as much B-roll as possible because then when we edit the UGC videos, it's so much better. And one of my last points for this one was also like you can't just pop in a script and then think something good will come out of it. I haven't really experienced that, not with archives or top view yet, because we always try and still polish it after and add B-rolls, add our own subtitles, make it look nice, edit in the right way. Like sometimes you'll use an AI tool and there's a hand that looks really weird, or the voice still is not really following the mouth. So in that way, it always needs to be cropped and trimmed and edited in a nice way so it just overall looks more human, and so that people can't see it's an AI video. That's really the main goal. But AI is here for the long run, so you better just be good at it. And it is already really strong with Arcats and TopView and these tools here, but it will only become stronger and stronger. Now you can have, if I have a headphones here, like you can take them and then, if for example with TopView.ai, you can have your product like have them holding your product, and if you edit that in the right way and so on, it can be such a cost efficient way of doing ads, and it's only getting stronger from here. And then I put in here, try to set a goal of creating 10 new AI UGC videos per week or month, depending on the brand, depending on the size of the brand. But with that said, like I would always prioritize quality over quantity, and I would not just spit out a lot of like bad videos. I would really try and focus on quality also with AI UGC, because if you just spit out a lot, it's not going to be the nicest, and it will be so visible that it will actually be an AI video. And at the same time, you still also want to consider, keeping the brain intact and keeping it in an authentic way. So yeah, but I would always try and take the winning hooks and scripts and then implement that into UGC. So if you already have just normal UGC creators, humans, and you have a successful video, then just take that and then just implement that into an AI UGC video, get it edited really nicely, and then it can do really well. But that's one type of video. If you just go to the next slide, Dominic, there's also another type of content that is also really powerful and also really cost efficient, which is EDC, employee generated content. I can see that time is flying by, so I'll just quickly go through this one. But this is also another like really cost efficient and efficient way to do content, because people trust people, and EDC stands for employee generated content. So this can be content of the founder about the brand, or the founder of the brand. It can also be the marketing manager, someone in the store, an assistant, operation. It can be any person really inside of a business. But people buy from people, and EDC, like employee generated content, it humanizes your brand instantly. And that can be like behind the scenes, it could be day in the life, it could be people at the warehouse showing how they package things, how they ship out things. It just builds so much authenticity to see people behind the brand. And people love that. People love transparency. And it can also just be short clips of employees using your product, sharing tips. For example, if it's a skincare brand, someone behind the business saying, like, this is why this is my favorite skincare brand that, or skincare product. Like, this is why this is my favorite cream that we have, because there's XYZ product in it, or XYZ material in it, or whatever. But it can just be people very casually and very authentic behind the brand, just talking about why it's a good business to work at, or why it's a good, like, what is the mission behind the brand and so on. And here you can just really use an iPhone. It can be just as good as a camera. But also it doesn't need to be like too human in it. You can also make it like salesy at the same time. So you can also still do some really good scripts. For example, like again, for example, going back to sleep, I just think that's so easy to talk about because I care so much about sleep myself. But for example, like if you have a script that's like about, I've been getting good sleep for the past 3 nights or for the last 3 months, this is the product, and then there's a tea or something like that. So yeah, and Mikkel also say on perfume here, yeah, EDC, employee generated content, 100%. It really works well, and there's so many brands that are utilizing these days, especially for example, perfume.de, then they also have physical stores. It can do really well if you have physical stores as well, because then you also utilize the physical stores you have for very good purpose. You not only have the physical store as a source of income, but also you can utilize the physical store for people to see online that they can actually trust your business, and again, it just creates more trust. So that's also a really good note. But yeah, I think that's it about ETCs. Overall, very authentic. Yeah, let's go to the next one, Dominic, so it does take too much time. And then what I would say is like number one word actually about marketing in general, but also like marketing, especially these days, because a lot of the things that are happening in 2025 is not so much about what's actually happening in the ad account or a little quick hack here and there regarding optimizing an ad account or a little tweak. It can do a major difference, especially if you're spending big budgets, and it's still important to be very data driven and to optimize at the best possible level, split test in the best possible way. But I see storytelling as being like number one word when talking about how to make ads convert in 2025, because as we all know, like attention spans are shrinking a lot, and people, they really pay a lot more attention to stories rather than like benefits and just selling instantly. So we see a lot that storytelling just creates a lot more emotional connection with. Starting here now. Okay, just 1 second, Dominic.
No worries.
It
No
was
worries at all.
just I just had like a purifier started.
Yeah.
No worries. But anyhow, like I see storytelling has been very important because like people, they would typically buy with emotion first and then justify it with logic. Can you hear this in the microphone, Dominic?
No, I hear you fine.
No, okay. It was my purifier that started. Oh, now it's
No,
done.
no, don't. I don't hear the purifier.
No,
I
okay,
just
perfect.
okay.
But
Yeah.
anyhow, like because people, they would typically buy with emotions first. So again, like if we talk about sleep, for example, like it can be talking about a pain point first, about why my sleep has been so bad, or what's going on here, and then like, oh, my time with the kids, or when I was out, I forgot something, or like sleep is a very good pain point. It can also be fitness. A lot of people want to improve their fitness. It can be a lot of different things. But then after that, justify it with logic, for example. Then you can talk into the product. What are the benefits? Why do you need a cool mattress? Or why do you need a tea to calm you down before sleep? Or whatever product it is. And that can really, again, just set you apart. And that can be founder or you as a founder, but it can also be employees talking about the storytelling behind the brand. It can also be customers that have a story, so utilize customers to tell their story about the brand. We've seen a lot of brands doing that, where they also bring in athletes that are using, can even be a pair of paints. There's a Danish brand called Shaping You Tomorrow that did this a lot, but having like athletes wearing paints and then like talking about why their story, and then tying that to the brand in a way as well. But it can be so powerful, and that can be both in the ads, but it can also be on the product pages, on the landing pages. It all sort of contribute to the bigger sort of brand narrative, and then again, you can sort of control the narrative about your brand. Yeah, so that's why storytelling is so important. And it can really turn a good product into a sort of a movement, and a customer into a fan, like sort of just building a community really. And I see it as that modern marketing is not just about selling products, but people want to be a part of. And we see so many brands where it's very true. For example, like also represent activewear brand or apparel brand. So many brands are utilizing storytelling these days, and I would a lot rather put the focus there rather than just owning that account. But time is flying by me, Dominic. I think we'll skip the last part. If you can go to the
Okay.
next one, I can.
Okay, no, I mean, no worries. It's really helpful.
We
So
have enough time?
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. But yeah, I just have two more, but one is how to not leverage AI. Like we do a lot of
I think
audits of
like,
different,
I want to focus on this slide particularly because I think a lot of people misuse it, you know. So I think it's good to
yeah,
focus on this one for sure. Yeah.
I think so as well. And that's actually why I brought it up because we're doing like a lot of audits on a lot of different businesses and we see a lot of different things. The normal one would be someone asking ChatGPT to act as a world-class direct-to-consumer copywriter. Here's my website, here's my product page, make a really good ad copy that drives me great return on ad spend on Facebook. And that typically doesn't really lead to a good result. And basic prompts just overall always lead to like results that sound like everyone else. And again, there are so many people competing now, and you want to use you want to still be human in everything that you do, and also be able to tell storytelling in the best possible way. So you need to be able to engineer high quality prompts, and great AI results always come from great inputs. It's pretty clear, put garbage in, you'll get garbage out. But on the other hand, if you put diamonds in, you'll get diamonds out. And AI is here for the long run, so you better just be good at it. Something that I see works so well is just using voice notes as well to AI or to ChatGPT. There's like a voice note feature when I'm out and about or when I'm just at my laptop. I typically use that voice note feature, but that's a side thing. But one thing you can use it for is, for example, researching your competitors. So one very concrete thing is just going to their reviews, whether that's Google reviews or reviews on Trustpilot or whatever, and then looking at all of their negative reviews. I see that so much value is also in negative reviews on, if you look at that on other businesses, and then you can just ask ChatGPT to let you know why is the customers unhappy about this specific brand, and then you can, for example, create specific hooks about that or include it in your brand. If, for example, people are unhappy about other brands because of their shipping or because of the customer service, and they can mention in our business, we care a lot about the customer service, or you can like fix these things in your own business if you haven't already, and then mention that in the ad script, for example. That's something that, for example, it can be used for, but also you can sort of ask it, tell me one thing about your customer that they won't even tell their wife or husband. Like really try and go deep with AI and just use it a lot for research purpose and not just say, hey, make a quick ad copy and so on. Also, one thing, you can really train a specific like chat on ChatGPT. It's so simple. If you have a specific chat where you've done so many different ad copies, then Facebook will sort of know your language, and something that we also utilize a lot to have like specific chats that knows your way of writing. And then it also always just becomes easier. But yeah, I think that's a good note regarding ChatGPT, and we just see a lot of brands it's like very generic, like ChatGPT ad copy, and I would try and avoid that at all costs. Something that it can also be used for if you have some very good hooks that you just know performs really well for you, then just ask ChatGPT to do 10 different variations of those hooks and improve on them or tweak them and so on. So you can take something already successful and then make it even better.
Yeah, I agree. I
That's it.
think, yeah, in general, right, it's a good foundation to start, and then you can always tweak it and improve it and tailor it. I think a lot of people for sure are hopefully doing that. But yeah, definitely leverage it where you can in terms of time. Do you want to talk
Yeah.
briefly about just discounts and offers and the
Yeah.
relevance of that?
Yeah, I definitely will. Like, I still think discounts and offers are relevant, also creating urgency and so on. I know a lot of people are talking about that it decreases the brand value and so on, and it also does. But we still see that it's a very effective way to get customers coming in from paid social, and a very good. It sort of lowers the barrier to entry. Discounts just give hesitant customers the final push to buy always. You don't want to have discounts all the time, but no, like it's just human psychology. Like urgency taps into human psychology, and limited time deals, it creates FOMO, fear of missing out, and it speeds up the decision making. And people, they always love a good deal, and they would always love a good deal no matter this year or next year. Like it's always like being able to package a good offer will always be valuable. And value perception is a huge driver of purchase behavior. So therefore, it's still such a relevant thing to look into. One thing I would always try and think about is making offers so simple, like specific and simple, so that even very young, like a baby, could almost understand the offer. Like having something so simple, like it's like 20% off today, and like it always outperforms these very complicated bundles. Or I think we've all tried to have like a very complicated discount, that just didn't work because people don't even understand it. So very important that's a smooth experience. And then always try and be as authentic as possible with your discounts. That's something that we see always works better. So for example, say, it's because we have this product restock deadline, or there's a seasonal sale right now, or new collection launch. It just makes it more believable. And the same thing with urgency, like use that responsibly. So that can be, because fake urgency will always damage and trust, or it will always damage your trust and kills repeat business. So you always need to have your repeat customers in mind. And what when they see that, because they will typically see that, or they will see the email, or they will see you posting on social media and so on. So always be strategic and think about being as authentic as possible. That can also be reasons, like we're improving our product now, therefore we're giving discounts on our latest version of our product, etc., etc. Also try and always pair the urgency with storytelling. So that can also be the why behind the offer. It's always good to have a why, and that can be, we're closing out this collection, we're designing something new. It's always good to have something like a reason for what you're saying. And yeah, also agree with your notes here, Angelo. Framing and naming your offer is also important. 100%. The naming of the offer is important as well. And then that can also be combined with the storytelling, for example. But yeah, and then like just last note that I had includes free shipping. Still see some brands charge for shipping, but I just think people are so used to that. Doesn't matter if it's in US or in the UAE. Like people are so used to not paying for shipping, and everyone has Amazon Prime, and they're used to just shopping really quickly and getting free delivery. So we always try to just make free delivery, and then just, or a lot rather increase the price a bit and then have free delivery rather than having the price and then delivery at checkout, because a lot of people will fall off and people are just used to not paying for the shipping. So that's my final note from here.
Really interesting. Okay. So like increasing the price of the actual product rather than itemizing, lower. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. So I guess that moves us to the next part of the presentation, which is, focusing on the M&A exit. So I think it's really important for people to understand, and as I said, 8 years doing this, I've worked on deals between 500K and 5 billion US dollars, public companies, private companies. I think it's really important to understand that selling a business just isn't a single event, right? It's a structured, multi-stage process that takes time. And sometimes we have founders who are particularly in a hurry to sell because for whatever reason, personal reason, or they see that their business is starting to plateau and even decline. I think it's really important from the get-go to understand that the timing of when you decide to sell is critical. And that's why it's important to not just look at the timeline as just one decision, but it's a multi-stage process. And we're going to go through, obviously, what buyers are looking for, as well as working backwards and building a business in mind. So there are 8 steps to the process of selling your business. Of course, there's deciding to exit. So understanding, okay, is it a good time to sell? What are the market multiples? Where is my business at in terms of growth? What are my key metrics looking like? Obviously, we'll go into that later. Once you decide to exit and decide on, I guess, a rough valuation or deal structure as a founder that you're open to, and you're typically talking to an advisor about these questions to provoke you thinking about it. We then make the deal go live. So between that step, you're not going to go live for sale until you've already critically thought about, do I even want to exit? Now, within that process, obviously, there's a lot of things you need to do. You need to get your financials in order. You need to get your financial data book, your profit and loss, your balance sheet, hygiene, all in order for a buyer to obviously review it. You need to make sure your metrics are in order and ready for any buyer to look and analyze it. Because again, first impressions matter. A buyer can be turned off. It doesn't matter how good your product is. If I've seen buyers walk away because they're just thinking, Dom, this is too much effort. It's too difficult. There are other e-commerce businesses for sale out there that I can acquire that have their documents in order. So it's really important that when the deal is live, you have everything in order. Once the deal is live, we then circulate the investment memorandum and your high level kind of teaser out to the buyers, the relevant buyers. And that's where you schedule one-to-one meetings. We obviously qualify those buyers. So we ask them questions about, for me, the first thing is, do you have money? Are you funded? Do you need to go through financing, external financing, or do you have your capital available? The serious buyers will already have their capital available. The unserious buyers will not answer the question, or they'll give you a waffled answer. So straight away, you know, we're making sure that we're focusing on those buyers that are qualified in terms of financing. The second thing is then, what's their background in terms of knowledge? You know, do they have an understanding of e-commerce? Have they bought a e-commerce business before? Do they have an interest? And the third thing is their specific plan with the business. So I always like to ask them high level, oh, so, you know, what is making you particularly interested in the cosmetics industry or the fashion industry? Do you have a passion in that? Already with those kind of 3 questions, you can already get a good flavor of what the discussions are going to be like. Once we kind of qualify those buyers and once we have those one-to-one meetings, we then provide a limited VDR, virtual data room, to those buyers, where they understand more information about the business, and then they can also decide whether or not they would like to move forward and make an offer. They then submit a non-binding offer, a letter of intent. You then skip through to, once you negotiate that, you then move to a due diligence phase, which we'll go through later, and then you execute the purchase agreement, and then you close. So for those that haven't sold a business before, I definitely like going through this timeline because a lot of people don't understand how it all works. Now, when deciding to build a business, it's always good to work backwards. Think exactly what is it that's attractive for a buyer. If I was to buy a business, what do I want? I want something that's defensible. I want something that's scalable. I want a good brand. I want something that I can make sure when I buy it, it's going to stay, it's going to be stable or grow. It's got solid foundations. So for me, the first thing in mind is to always make sure that you have a strong foundation as a business. You know, have strong systems, structure your operations. So if you're away for a week or 2 weeks or 1 month, or if you decide to sell the business to someone else, you can hand off the business quite easily. It will make you so much more attractive as a founder or as a company to acquire if you have structured operations in place. They don't have to be expensive structures, by the way. They can just be simply, you know, having clear responsibilities for freelancers, or also having a standard SOP, standard operating procedure. Basically, the goal is to be able to prove to a buyer that you have everything in order and that you're able to hand it off easily in the event they buy it. Of course, there's removing founder dependency. So maybe this contradicts a little bit about like having a story. Of course, have the story around the brand, but really try and focus on the brand rather than the founder too much. Again, this is when we're looking to exit. When you're looking to grow, of course, you want to have the founder in the story and growing it. But as you start growing and as you start getting to a certain level, try to start divorcing yourself or your personal identity from the brand, because again, it will make you a lot more attractive to sell. Documenting everything, I've already made that clear about having like clear SOPs. Certainly a lot of, when I have these conversations with founders, they're so focused on revenue. Look, revenue obviously matters to a certain point, but when it comes to exiting, all buyers care about is your SDE or your EBITDA, okay? It's so important that you focus clearly and your metrics are very tied to your profitability as a business. Of course, if you're growing, right, and you're just starting off, obviously, then that's different. Like if you're going to sacrifice profitability, then you better have some clear growth. If you're investing in marketing, then obviously you want growth to be attributable to that. So it's really important that you keep that in mind. Obviously, creating customer retention systems. Viktor spoke about that earlier. Making sure that you have clear, you know, email flows, Klaviyo, loyalty programs, subscriptions, having a defensible business. All of this adds to the defensibility around your brand and business, and which obviously links to a more attractive LTV to CAC ratio, right? Because If you have repeat purchases, then you don't have to spend money to acquire those customers again, and that's super attractive from a profitable point of view. Yeah, I spoke about this earlier, like clean professional financials. It's certainly a pain of mine, you know, as someone who was in financial due diligence, you know, for a number of years. You know, please invest time and resources into having clean professional financials. I've had several buyers not even look at the business, not even open the file, or they have a 30-second, before we're talking about a 3-second hook. Well, you know, with financials, it's maybe not 3 seconds, it's certainly a 30-second, right? If it doesn't look clean, if it doesn't look in order, it's too much of a pain for serious buyers to spend time trying to get your numbers in order. So please take the time, and please invest in the resources, the necessary resources to make sure everything's ready. It will add to the number of buyers that will be interested, which will add to the multiple that you get in the end, because then we'll have a more competitive process. Build a brand, not just a product. I mean, I think these are all things that Viktor has mentioned, so I won't go on about that. If we're moving to types of buyers, so what type of buyer is going to buy your business, right? And if we're focusing on e-commerce, so as you all probably know, you know, there were aggregators for a number of years. There are less aggregators in the space. However, they're still floating around, and some of them are still acquiring. You've got PE firms. Now, PE firms are typically, you know, mostly interested at a minimum kind of level, where, you know, you're looking probably at EBITDA of at least 500,000 to one, you know, at least 500,000, I would say, per year. But, you know, those private equity firms are looking for stable cash flows, bolt-on opportunities to their other portfolio companies. And they often want a very, let's say, professional professional process. You've then got the strategic buyers, and, you know, everyone's ears prick up when they hear strategic buyers, because why? They're buying businesses for strategic reasons. And when you buy something for a strategic reason rather than a financial reason, like a private equity buyer, you're willing to pay a higher multiple. So, you know, you can see multiples being in the 5 to 7x stage of certain strategic buyers when it's clear that your brand or product offers synergy to their strategic company. So it's really important that you have clear metrics and clear data on your customers, your supply chain, and how you can scale the business, because the whole reason why these strategic buyers are looking to acquire you is to obviously grow you. Another type of buyer is obviously the individual operators and search funds. So they're looking for more, you know, hands-on businesses around, let's say, 100K EBITDA, 200K EBITDA. Of course, you know, on Flippa, there are businesses that are worth less than that, and they're also tradable. But if we're talking more about kind of the larger buyers, or larger high net wealth individuals or operators, they're looking for those businesses that, you know, have at least 100K EBITDA, because those acquirers themselves need enough EBITDA in the business to scale it and to hire people and to make it more standalone for themselves. So what exactly are buyers looking for? I think there's huge overlap, right? And I've been really specific here. Of course, it's a range, but this is, you know, I have hundreds of conversations with buyers. And this is basically a lot of the key questions that they're asking when I'm having these conversations. All right, Dom, what's the SDE margin? You know, if it's around 20% to 35%, it's a tick. You know, year-on-year growth. Of course, growth means further opportunity. It means a good product. It's something that I said earlier about timing. When you decide to sell the business, it's so critical. So unfortunately, I have founders that like to kind of squeeze as much juice out of the business as much as possible and then look to sell. And then there's less upside for the buyer, and therefore the multiple is more depressed. So it's really important that, you know, obviously you don't need to be growing to sell, but if you want those attractive multiples, you certainly, and want to make the most of it, you certainly need to be looking to go to market while you're in a growing phase. And then, of course, you know, from a financial point of view, they're looking for your trailing months profit and loss statements. It's really important. Then there's, of course, like the retention and revenue quality. So when I think of revenue quality, I think of returning customers, I think of subscriptions. I'm thinking of like your, you know, key average order values, right? So If you have a returning customer rate of 20%, that's super impressive. If it's higher, fantastic. You want your LTV to CAC ratio of being at least 3. I've seen businesses with a lot higher. I've also seen businesses with less and still sell. But basically this is saying for every $1 of marketing that I spend to acquire a customer, how much money or how much revenue can I make from that customer? Of course, we've got subscription or repeat revenue. What is interesting for a buyer? Stability, predictability. If you have businesses which have predictable revenue, that's one of the reasons why SaaS is such an attractive asset class, or has been for some time. If you're able to, as an e-commerce business, have subscriptions, it's obvious, right? It's easier for forecasting. It's easier to of course, predict in terms of what marketing spend you need, what orders you need. It makes the whole kind of process from a budgeting point of view a lot more straightforward. And then of course we look at AOV. So you want those high average order products. It leaves a lot greater room for margin as a business, which in turn relates to profitability. Of course, channel diversification, that's also important. Buyers are looking for, as soon as you're dependent on a channel of 70% or more revenue, look to diversify. I have that with Amazon businesses, for example. So Amazon businesses, sometimes they come to me, 99% of their revenue or 90% of their revenue is from Amazon. I often advise them, all right, consider starting a D2C kind of channel before coming to sell, or if you really want to sell, you can sell now. And then there's a lot of buyers out there that see that as value add. What they do is they buy these Amazon businesses or buy a D2C business, and the first thing they do is use their skills and leverage their skills to then offer other channels. If we then also move to kind of media marketing, an interesting ROAS. I mean, I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Viktor. Like a good kind of Meta ROAS, Google ROAS. I think that's also interesting because obviously you want to make sure that the product's ads translate to better revenue. So I'm not sure, Viktor, what your view is on kind of a strong Meta ROAS.
I think that's pretty doable, like 2.5 to 4. But it depends a bit on the profit margins. That's also something I would actually love to get your take on, Dominic, in terms of profit margins and so on. But if they have a healthy e-com brand, maybe 70-80% profit margins, then yeah, 100% they can scale with 2, 3, 4 ROAS on Meta with like acquiring new customers. Definitely, especially if they're factoring lifetime value, it can't be a bad business in that way. But at the same time, if it's like a business that are more bespoke and the profit margins are way lower, then, or if they're selling other brands, then they will obviously need higher margins. So I'd say it depends so much on that. But I think 2.5 to 4 is pretty good on Meta, pretty good multiple. And Google, I guess, is 3 to 6 because here you also have, that's the thing with Google. A lot of the clicks that you will get will be people that are still like, they're already in the market and searching for example, your brand. And then you'll get clicks that are being attributed to the campaigns, but they would have searched either way in a way. So we often see that. But yeah, I think blended ROAS of 3 is a very good multiple for most businesses with like 70-80% margins.
Yeah, for sure. If the gross margins are that high, then there's definitely some room to play with that for sure in terms of marketing spend. Thanks, Viktor. And also, I'm conscious of time, but we had a lot of signups, so we're going to record this anyway, the full version, because we're going to be sharing it with everyone. So, if you have to drop off due to other time commitments, no worries, we understand, but we'll keep going and then we'll be sending the recording. Because I do see it's close to 7 o'clock. Or yeah, it's been nearly 1 hour. If we look at the key metrics for a buyer, obviously operations and team, so we know about this, right? Don't be critical to daily operations, outsource it. We're in a world now where it's incredible about the globalization and the outsourcing that you can do and the arbitrage opportunities. Use it to your advantage, learn how to delegate. It's so important. Brand strength. I mean, you don't have to talk to me about that. Obviously our expert here, Viktor, but obviously brand strength is critical. Why is it critical? It's critical because, again, it's defensible. It's something that It's an intangible asset that a buyer is attracted to. And it's a way that you can differentiate your product, obviously, from other e-commerce brands that are selling similar products. And again, that's what's going to contribute to a premium multiple. So how exactly do you value your business? Obviously, there's the simplistic view. And sorry if you already know this, but I have to assume that people don't know. It's simply your last 12 months SDE, seller discretionary earnings, profit, EBITDA, or revenue times a multiple. Now, in e-commerce, it's 99% EBITDA or SDE. It's almost never revenue. It's only revenue if you're growing at an insane amount and you're an early business. So I just want to be clear on that. And of course, what are those kind of important elements of the business in order to contribute to these multiples? Because the goal is to obviously have the highest multiple possible. The higher the multiple, the bigger the price. So, typically, multiples are falling between 2 to 5. I would say most of the time it's more 2 to 3, particularly at the moment. And what exactly are the elements of the business which contribute to those multiples? So you've obviously got the age of the business. If you're 1 to 2 years old, probably hold off a little bit. You need to show a bit more historic growth and defensibility. We spoke about owner involvement, growth trends, churn. Try and shift any way possible towards a product, a subscription product. And then what is your churn like? Funding status, are you bootstrapped? We're usually looking for bootstrap businesses. Customer lifetime value, CAC, average order value. These are all kind of elements that you as founders know and don't need me to tell you about. But obviously all these factors contribute to how attractive a business is for a buyer. And as I said, the current kind of valuation ranges are more between 2 and 3. But of course, like in M&A, there's always, room to negotiate, and we're always trying to push for, those higher multiples. So there are cases, of course, where a business can be up to 5x, sometimes higher. 3 or 4 years ago, certainly higher. But the current market, you're probably looking max at 5. So then we look at due diligence. So what exactly is involved in due diligence? Now, due diligence is the phase after the LOI, so after the letter of intent, which is often a non-binding offer. So essentially, expect your buyers to request bank statements, tax returns, ad account access. These are all normal requests. And these are all requests after a non-binding offer has been accepted to make sure that that you're speaking the same language. Supplier agreements. Now, I hold back those supplier agreements until the very end. So they have to be 99% sure that they're going to buy this business before we hand over the supplier agreements. Of course, we might hand over the terms, right, of those supplier agreements, but I like to redact, obviously, the names of those suppliers. Traffic and analytics data, IP or legal entity documents. Red flags that kill deals. It's messy financials. It causes, firstly, it is annoying to deal with from a workload point of view from a buyer. Secondly, it decreases the amount of trust that they have in your business. And thirdly, it often leads to disputes. And what I mean by that is when they're first looking at your business before the LOI stage and making the offer, if there are discrepancies between that and the due diligence phase, then they have to retrade and then they have to negotiate a new price. And then you as a founder have to think, oh, well, I thought I was selling it for, 2 million, but now looking at the EBITDA, it's actually now resulted in the price being lower to 1.6 million, and in your head you thought you were getting 2 million. So it's really important just to be honest with yourself. Obviously, undisclosed debts, always just be transparent. I think that's really obvious. Being over reliant on one traffic channel, and no formal contracts with staff or SOPs. And then closing. So it's really important to understand the closing process. So once DD has been completed, then you sign the asset purchase agreement, and after that, there's typically a transition plan. So what happens there is, firstly, you sign the asset purchase agreement. The buyer funds the amount of money into escrow, and then once the funds are received in escrow, then the assets are transferred, and then the money is released to the founder. You then have the transition plan, and release of funds is relating to if you have a specific earnout or seller financing, which are types of deal structures. If you're interested in deal structures, you can reach out to me at the end of the webinar and we can go into details of the different types of deal structures that I'm seeing at the moment. But yeah, that leads us kind of to the end. So I did skip through it a little bit faster just to make sure we could make time and that everyone could hear. But I guess there's questions, or if there aren't any questions, firstly, I'll give people a moment to ask some questions if there are any.
I'm just curious, Dominic. Now you mentioned that you saw higher multiples like it was 3 or 5 years ago rather than
Yeah.
or compared to today. Like, why is that?
Yeah, so I would say like during COVID times, you saw high growth of these businesses. And so that obviously attracted a lot of acquirers because you saw high growth and there was a fundamental shift in purchasing behavior. The second thing was funding. So all these aggregators had funding from banks, and a lot of these businesses were very bankable, these e-commerce businesses. And when you have easy access to financing, you're able to bid a lot higher on businesses. So they were kind of the two kind of key reasons why those multiples were higher. Then what happened was a lot of these aggregators, unfortunately, financially it didn't work out. They didn't do their DD. The growth that they saw during COVID was not the same that it was post-COVID. And essentially that deflated a lot of the multiples. And I think, I've been at Flippa for 2.5 years, really focusing on online businesses, and the flavor of the month was certainly SaaS when I started. But I would say in the last 6 to 12 months, actually, except for the last month with the tariffs going on, of course. But the last 6 to 12 months, excluding the last month with the tariffs, there's certainly been a lot of appetite for physical goods rather than SaaS, because people are obsessed with the business model of SaaS due to the predictable revenues and the scalability and the profitability. But with the threat of AI, it's hard to see what's going to happen there. So those businesses with physical goods are very, very attractive. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that makes sense. Very interesting.
Cool.
Is it often with an earnout or?
Yeah, so on the deal structures, I mean, typically, I'm always pushing for 70 to 80% paid up front, and
Yeah.
then a holdback. It's very rare to get 100% up front for a number of reasons. And I like to shift more towards seller financing, where you get a predictable amount of repayment over, so the remaining 20% is paid over 12 months or 24 months per month, than an earnout, because you have to be very careful with how you structure your earnouts, because you're putting trust in someone else to run the business for you. And you have to make sure that those earnouts aren't gamified, and you have to be very experienced in structuring those earnouts for you to make it work. And usually those buyers that offer earnouts know the game. So yeah, it is important, obviously, to speak with someone experienced in that before agreeing to an earnout. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Do you sometimes see that the founder needs to stay in the ecom brand for some time?
Yeah, so if they're very much a founder that's part of the brand, it's very hard to kind of let them go so soon. But yeah, the more standalone operation the e-commerce brand is, the less dependency there is on the founder and the less transition period is required. But of course, the buyer wants the founder to stay on for as much as they can. But then it's, the better position you're in with leverage in terms of negotiating, the less time you'll spend if you need to.
Yeah. What is the
But
longest you've seen someone stay for?
yeah, I've seen 2 years, 3 years. But what's normal, and I didn't probably should have given you a normal kind of deal structure. You're probably looking between 3 and 6 months. That's very normal.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Well, yeah, really appreciate all your insights, Victor. What we'll be doing is, sorry, I just see here. a question actually on earnouts. Can you include seller incentives if revenue growth is solid? So yeah, you can. I mean, it's really important to structure it as revenue. And Andrea, I'm glad you spoke about revenue, not profit, because often profit can be manipulated by the buyer. So it's important if you do go by a profit-based earnout, it's very clear in the APA how profit is calculated. So yeah, of course you can include revenue as part of an earnout. And typically, sometimes you have sellers who are getting acquired by a large kind of high net wealth individual, very experienced e-commerce operator, and they want to grow with them. And maybe that original founder doesn't have the expertise, usually they do, or the capital to invest and scale in advertising, for example. So they want to be part of that. So yeah, there are cases where sellers, it's like a marriage though, you need to DD. Whenever I'm structuring these earnouts, I'm always asking the buyer for 2 or 3 examples of previous companies, e-commerce companies that they've run. And even sometimes push for an existing founder that they've worked with on a previous deal just to see what it's really like. Again, if they're a confident if they're a confident buyer, they've got nothing to hide and they'll be very open about it. So don't be afraid to be bullish, when you're looking at these structures. But that's a fantastic question. Thank you. Yeah. So what we'll be doing is we'll be sending out this webinar tomorrow, or certainly this week via the marketing team. And we'll also be including the contact details of myself and Viktor. And if you would like to kind of book a meeting with us or ask any follow-up questions, we're more than happy to speak with you about it. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining. Viktor, if you have some as well.
I think Alan Bruch, he answered something in another chat,
Oh,
Dominic.
sorry.
I think it's because there's 2 chats.
Oh, sorry. Apologies. Okay, there's one open question. Sorry about that. Thanks, Viktor.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. If you have a business, the question is, if you have a business that has a very strong domain and also a 30-year-old e-commerce business, how would you market that? So I think firstly, like it's very attractive that you have the age of 30 years. That's fantastic. And if you have a strong domain, that obviously leads to more kind of attractiveness from an organic point of view, and less dependence on kind of inorganic traffic. Yeah, how I would market it, that is exactly that, without knowing obviously about the product of the business or the revenue numbers or the growth. But I would certainly say that, with the age and stability of 30 years, it's very different to a lot of different businesses. Hotsauce.com. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So if it sounds like it's a source product, yeah, I would obviously have to know more about the numbers. But yeah, it sounds like a very strong domain as well, hotsauce.com. How would I market it? Yeah, it would depend on obviously the numbers, but you want to advertise it as a business with a strong domain, little dependence on marketing costs, and making sure that you can grow it, with the upside of marketing. So if you currently like have a strong foundation of a domain and you have organic kind of traffic coming to your site, all right, a buyer wants to know what they can do with that. And if it has solid foundations, will they get a return if they invest in marketing and can leverage off that? I will definitely Google this at another time to see what it's about. But thank you, Alan, for the question. Fantastic. No problem, Alan. Thank you. Yeah, so I guess we'll leave it at that. As I see, there's no other questions, but thank you, everyone. And Viktor, if you have any closing remarks.
Thank you for having me, Dominic. It was a pleasure. And yeah, it was very nice to be here.
Perfect. All right. Well, looking forward to the next one. And have a good day or evening, everyone. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.